Today we're going to be learning realistic wood and texture using pencil. We'll start by creating an outline for the patterns, and then we'll continue by exploring the different techniques for creating wood grain patterns, adding shadows and highlights to give it a lifelike appearance. So what I'm going to do is to draw a very simple box right here that I can create my wood texture within. And then I can go ahead and get us started. I'm going to go ahead and add in a very light gray value on top of my entire square. I'm just using an HB pencil for this. Then determine the direction of the light source. Then first off, I just want to sketch out my wood texture. It's very important and helpful to look at a reference to create your texture. Then let's add some knots. The knot can be an oval or a circle, whatever. If there's any empty space, when it's all over, just continue with the pattern. Then draw the cracks. All I'm gonna do is just lightly sketch those in where I think I want them to be. And again, I'm doing this very lightly at this stage so that if I need to erase anything, I can always come back and erase. Then add a few more lines along the length of the board in the direction you want the grain to go. It's really important that you space these lines farther and farther apart. Make each line twice as far out as the previous one. Draw the rings of the wood grain as you get to the edge of the board. Make sure the knots are spaced far enough away so the rings won't overlap. Then I can go ahead and darken those in. I'm going to keep them pretty thin, but make them as dark as possible. So I switch my pencil to a 6B graphite pencil. Since these cracks are considered to be grooves, we should use our darkest values for them. And as I get to the end of these cracks, I'm gonna make some of them sort of fade out and get really thin on both ends since I don't want them all to connect back to the end of my frame. I think it makes it look more natural and random. Then I'll pull these edges out just a little bit and really enhance those cracks by darkening them layer by layer. I darkened these two half ovals and put a soft layer of graphite here. These are considered to be knots on the wood. You can use the same 6B graphite pencil with less pressure, or you can switch to a lighter pencil if you desire. I can work on them later and make them darker, but I think it's fine for now. You can see that it already starts to pop out and look more 3D. Next, add the wood grain texture itself. Use a sharpened pencil to create thin parallel lines. For me, it's still the same 6B graphite pencil, but I keep sharpening it. I'm adding these straight lines around each of these oval shapes to cover the pattern outlines and make them feel more like a texture than a simple stroke. There are different techniques we can do to add more texture to the drawing. We can add in some short broken lines or do some stipples and dot patterns. Or add a couple knots, which is basically just a swirly shape, or a couple of circles within each other. A bunch of rings like this. And then we can just continue to add that grain around it. We can also have our wood grain cross over these cracks. Decide which side will be the highlight, midtone, and shadow. Fill in the shadow areas with darker values and the midtone areas with a midtone value. Leave the highlights with more white space since it's closer to the light source. Make the pointy side of these ovals darker and add gradation to each one of them as you get closer to the central oval. Add a dark ring around this oval, but don't cover the edge entirely. Do the same for the other one. Then I'm going to go back in there and darken all my cracks and the textures I created to bring my drawing to the next level. Add even darker shadows on the opposite side of the light source. Do it in several layers, and in each step, feather out your strokes to add gradation as you get closer to the lighter areas. Then I'm just going to lightly draw in some straight lines randomly. Leave a small space between each crack and the wood grain to create a highlight. Draw in additional details such as random strokes, horizontal broken lines, or imperfections. You can even add more cracks if you like. Here we'll be going in the same direction, and I draw these lines at different sizes, and I'll often have some of them changing direction slightly, maybe some chips in them amongst these grains. Make a small differences in texture and details. Create those horizontal lines at different lengths and sizes. So we want to add a little bit of white space underneath each one of our cracks to create that third dimension by adding a highlight on the edges. So grab your knead eraser, shape it the way you like, and start to create those highlights on the edges. And we're just going to continue to do that all the way through our wooden board. We can even sort of darken these edges a little bit more just to create some more contrast and shadow. For the final step, I'll go for refining my texture. I can darken some areas to make a better contrast, and I can also create more random horizontal lines, even some small vertical lines to give it a more natural texture. I can also change the amount of pressure that I apply with the pencil with each stroke so that these lines contrast with each other. So I want to leave this side a little bit lighter since this is where the light is coming down from above. Again, I'm going to add more dark shadows on this bottom edge since this is the opposite side of my light source. By following these simple steps in this tutorial, you can learn how to create your own realistic wood texture and use them to enhance your artwork. Thank you so much guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Until next time, bye.